What up, friends? This review is coming from me to you, and today we are going to be reviewing Quadeca's debut project, From Me to You. Quadeca is an American hip-hop artist, producer, and YouTuber, and he's not unfamiliar to the music scene by any means. He's uploaded raps and comedy sketches on his channel before, but this is his debut project as like a legit actual musician. Honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. While a bit overly long, vibey, and it can come off kind of amateurish at parts, I do think that Quadeca shows a lot of promise in his production, flows, and his relatability. Not counting the intro, Sisyphus is a great way to kick things off. The beat is delicate and elegant with a wistful sort of energy in its guitar and string passages. Heavy electronics and samples pulse throughout, giving the track a sense of weight. Quadeca's flows are also pretty engaging on this one, and he has a very natural cadence to him, I think. There's also some pretty good wordplay in comparing his relationship and breakup to a mountain that he has to overcome, and classic mythological tales like the tale of Sisyphus. Definitely one of the best songs on the album, that's for sure. On a complete opposite note, Candles on Fire is a dark yet groovy trap banger. It's a bit of a mood whiplash, although I do really like the very driving beat and noise aesthetic that it has. There's some really fun flows that transition seamlessly into the chorus, too. There's some pretty witty bars about being like his teachers to show and not tell, and how he deals with these emotional weights on his mind while also being very confident in his skills, or at least he tries to present himself that way to others. Unfortunately, Shades of Us is when the album starts to show some of its rougher edges. When Quadeca's not rapping, his voice honestly isn't that powerful. The wispy production keeps things interesting, and Quadeca's flows are still good. However, we do get a taste of his unfortunate cheesiness that tends to show up here and there. Like, sometimes I reminisce and I cringe so much that I audibly go, fuck. And you would do the same shit if you were inside my brain. Like, this sounds like something a 14-year-old Joker fan would come up with. I will say, it's not the worst on the record, it's just not one of my favorites. Smiling at the Ground is pretty similar to the last track with the same strengths and weaknesses, although I do think this one has a bit more wit to it. I like the fuzzy drums and whimsical synth, along with the fact that it still does retain its harder edge, especially near the end. Can't You See is unfortunately probably one of the worst offenders of my problems with this album. It is far too spacey for its own good, with Quadeca's vocals just kind of straining over a very skeletal beat. This is just one of those tracks that doesn't go anywhere, and it makes its almost 4-minute runtime really feel like a slog. For a longer album like this type of track is something that you seriously want to avoid unless you have like a good beat or vocal melody on it, and this one just unfortunately has neither. However, with Maybe Another Day, there's a great lead-in with the guitar, and the pitched chorus is a great hook, actually. There's such a smoothness to the verses, and the general wall of sound aesthetic here is just fantastic. The string flourishes are also well done, and they add a sort of sense of progression to the song overall. There definitely is a lot going on in the production side of things, but honestly, that's what makes it so good. It also does a pretty good job in showing off Quadeca's wit, with how his family thinks he's a vampire, how his melatonin is patient with him, and how he's already filled up his quota with the bullshit he can deal with today. Like, honestly, lyrically, this is some pretty good stuff. And after that great stuff, we reached another one of my least favorites, Alone Together. Similar to Can't You See, it's a very vibey track with just not very engaging vocals. I actually don't really have a problem with the lyrics on this one all that much, it's just that the song is so boring that I just can't bring myself to really care about anything that's going on in it. Though I will say, those "You're the king of lying, no Hakuna Matata, and life's a treadmill, you think you work out, but you see you're still stuck in the same place," I mean, those are pretty corny, come on. There's a pretty hard instrumental on Burning Bridges, Long Day, and Quadeca's aggressive flows match this vibe perfectly. It is a bit lyrical spiritual at times, but it is still fun. I think his attitude is just an absolute highlight on this one. His humor is mixed in well, and it just comes off as very genuine to me. The IDK feature doesn't really elevate the track at all, although I don't really think he ruins the song either. He kind of just matches Quadeca, but he just doesn't really do anything to stand out. The switch up to the long day portion of the track was pretty clean, and I do think it's a decent summary and follow through to the angst that was present on the first portion of the track, especially as we see that Quadeca is tired of dealing with people who doubt his skills. Another banger shows itself in the form of Work. Play That Boy Zay's hook is really catchy, and Quadeca's forceful flows fit the erratic sort of nature to this industrial beat. The second verse adds a deeper bass and some more noise, creating this very insidious sort of soundscape. The third verse is a bit more empowering, as Quadeca is deciding that he's just going to chase the bag and not really worry about what anybody else thinks about him. However, it also becomes a bit somber near the end as he realizes he's kind of pushing everybody away as a result. The upbeat and light trap beat of People Pleaser kind of reminds me of like a Rich Brian beat a little bit. This one is pretty inoffensive, but there's nothing really great about it either. Both of the verses are fine, and I like the sort of sing-songy nature to Guapdad's flows, but the repetitiveness of the beat just doesn't do this track any favors. The hook, unfortunately, is also not the greatest. It's All a Game, on the other hand, is one of the best songs on the album. I love that piano intro, and those vibrant drums are a great way to propel the track forward. Quadeca's vocals on the chorus are actually pretty good, and the curtain of strings in the background are a great backdrop to that. The whole thing gives me some emo rap vibes, like maybe something Sadistic might do, and the use of sound effects on this one is also really interesting. There's some great wordplay and bars, and I feel like his honesty really shines through on this one. Lyrics like, "'Cause would I still be in the picture if we had to turn the cameras off," show that Quadeca can really write some heartfelt and relatable stuff. "Where'd You Go" comes out of nowhere, but it also goes pretty hard. Admittedly, while the track is pretty decent on its own, it just comes out of left field. It is very unfitting for the record. This is especially true on a production standpoint. Honestly, this would belong better on like maybe a Denzel Curry project or something like that, where they can balance the intensity and aggression and also the darkness. Quadeca's album, though, it's just not going for that most of the time, so it just comes off as disjointed. However, the intensity does fit the lyrics about selling out, conforming, record labels, and all of that sort of stuff. It's kind of repetitive after a while, although it is short enough where it doesn't necessarily overstay its welcome. It's just a very odd outlier on the track list. Not counting the outro, Summit Part 1 is a very good send-off for the record. That soulful, sample-driven beat is classy as hell, and the smoothness of the flows are just really nice. It is less experimental compared to some of the others from a production standpoint, however, using a more normal beat and using the experimental touches as flourishes, it's a pretty good switch-up, and I think it does make the track stand out. I think it also sums up the themes of the album relatively well, trying to balance confidence and cynicism, and also his idealistic views and his pessimistic ones. This album is a very interesting, yet a very varied listen. There's a lot going for it, mainly in the production and the flows, but a lot of amateurish decisions kind of hold it back. The record as a whole is a bit too vibey for its own good, even with the experimental production. Quadeca's lyrics toggle between witty and relatable to corny and basic. And his singing voice that he insists on using just isn't that great at the present time. The interludes that I didn't really cover in this review are pointless, and the album's pacing overall just kind of feels haphazard. However, I do think he does show a lot of promise in said production, in the lyrics and flows when they are there, and just in his relatability. I think it's just a matter of time before Quadeca makes a project that'll really wow me, honestly. I'm feeling a strong 5 on this one. Of course, we do have to talk about the album cover on the show, and this is honestly a really good album cover. The grayscale image of him in the snow with the big puffed up jacket, the dynamic pose, it really does fit the aesthetic of the album. It fits the production style nicely. It has a kind of a chilly effect, although it is very kind of homely and introspective, I will say. So I think it was a pretty perfect album cover choice. Of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think of it? Is he someone to watch? Did you think he's just kind of a normal YouTuber gone rapper, or is he something more? Let me know. If you liked this, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the things. Do we even do all that anymore? Probably, but do it if you want to. And until the next one, farewell.